The sun rose slowly over the Golden Horn, its light creeping across the rooftops of Constantinople like spilled honey. In the quiet outskirts of the city, far from the clamor of the hippodrome or the theological debates of the Hagia Sophia, a man named Theophilos the Beekeeper was already at work. His day began before dawn, as it always did, with the soft hum of bees greeting him like old friends. You might wonder, what was so special about a Byzantine beekeeper? In an empire known for its gold mosaics, grand emperors, and endless wars, why does Theophilus matter? The answer lies not in battles or intrigue, but in the quiet, methodical labor that kept an empire running. Honey was more than just a sweetener. It was medicine, currency, and even a form of preservation. Without beekeepers like Theophilus, Byzantium itself might have crumbled sooner. His hives were simple things, woven from reeds and coated in clay to keep the Mediterranean heat at bay. Each one bore the faint scent of beeswax and thyme, a fragrance that clung to Theophilos' robes long after he returned home. The bees themselves were a particular breed, descendants of hives brought from Greece centuries earlier. They were docile, productive, and most importantly, loyal to their keeper. Theophilos' mornings followed a strict routine. First, he checked the hives for signs of sickness. A collapsed comb or an unusual buzzing pattern could mean disaster. Then, he harvested just enough honey to sell at market, leaving the rest for the colony to survive the winter. His hands moved with practiced ease, never rushing, never startling the bees. He spoke to them in low murmurs, as if they were his children. He found the same as they did. He took them to school. He checked his mail for typos. When the mail stopped flowing, he folded them up in school and put them in his pockets, then hid them in the comb's momentary silence, lest they make a noise. His hands moved with practiced ease, never rushing as if they were his children, their scabbards quavering. He spoke to them in low murmurs, as if they were his children. But beekeeping in the 6th century was not without its dangers. Bears occasionally wandered down from the hills, drawn by the scent of honey. Thieves, too, were a constant threat. Honey was valuable enough to steal, and Theophilos had lost hives before to midnight raids. Yet the greatest challenge was the Byzantine tax collector, who arrived every autumn to claim the imperial share. Theophilos kept meticulous records on wax tablets, listing each hive's output, but he knew the officials always took a little extra. As the sun climbed higher, Theophilos paused to wipe his brow. In the distance, he could hear the bells of the city calling the faithful to prayer. He did not rush to join them. God, he believed, would understand that the bees came first. But as he worked, a troubling thought nagged at him. After he hung up with Barcel, he walked home, having to run all the way to the front door from the fear that he might. The winters had been growing colder lately. Last year, 3 of his hives had not survived. If this continued, would there be enough honey for the empire? Would there even be enough for his own family? Theophilos sighed and returned to his task. There was nothing to do but wait and see.
Theophilos had learned long ago that the empire's hunger for honey was insatiable. Every autumn, like clockwork, the tax assessor arrived, a thin-lipped bureaucrat named Nikephoros, with his slate tablet and a small armed escort. Theophilos would greet him with the customary bow, offer a cup of watered wine, and then brace himself for the inevitable negotiations. 30 jaws this season, Nikephoros declared, scanning the hives with a practiced eye. Theophilos suppressed a frown. Last year it had been 25. The summer was dry, he said carefully. The bees struggled. I can give 22. Nikephoros tapped his stylus against the tablet. The emperor's kitchens demand 30. The physicians, the wine merchants, they all need their share. This was the dance they performed every year. Theophilos knew the real reason for the increase: war in the east. The army needed honey to treat wounds, to preserve rations, to sweeten the stale bread fed to conscripts. But if he gave away too much, his own family would go hungry. So he played his part. He sighed, shook his head, and finally agreed to 28 jars, but only if Nikephoros accepted 2 jars of his finest, time-infused honey as a personal gift. The official pocketed the bribe with a nod, and the matter was settled. But Theophilos kept a second ledger hidden beneath a loose floorboard in his home. In it he recorded the true number of hives, not 50, but 63. The real honey yield, not 80 jars, but 112. And the names of those who paid him in silver instead of imperial decrees. A wealthy spice merchant bought 5 jars a month for his daughter's weak lungs. A monastery outside the city took 10 for their medicinal syrups. Even a minor court eunuch slipped him coins for a private stash. It was dangerous. If caught, Theophilos could be fined, imprisoned, or worse. But he had learned from his father, "The empire takes first, so you must take second." That evening, as he counted his hidden jars by lamplight, his wife, Eudokia, watched in silence. Finally she spoke. "They say the new tax commissioner is stricter." Theophilos paused. "Who says that?" "The baker's wife. Her cousin works in the treasury. They're sending inspectors to check records." A cold knot formed in his stomach. He thought of his son, only 12, still too young to tend the hives alone. He closed the ledger. "Then we'll need a better hiding place."
The first frost came early that year. Theophilos woke to a brittle quiet. No buzzing, no rustling of wings. He rushed to the hives, his breath fogging in the dawn air, and pressed his ear against the clay-covered reeds. Nothing. He pried open the nearest hive with trembling hands. Inside, the bees lay still as tiny statues, their bodies curled in frozen clusters around empty honeycombs. They had starved before the cold even took them. He had harvested too much. Eudokia found him kneeling in the dirt, clutching a lifeless handful of bees. She didn't speak. There was nothing to say. News spread quickly. By midday, neighbors arrived with grim offerings: a sack of barley, a wedge of hard cheese, a promise of olive oil come spring. Even the baker, whose own stores were thin, left a loaf at their door. Theophilos had always been generous with his honey. Now the city returned the favor in crumbs. But the empire was less forgiving. When Nikephoros arrived for the winter tax inspection, he found only 8 surviving hives. His face darkened as he tallied the loss. "The garrison at Antioch expects its shipment," he said. "The emperor's physicians." "There is no shipment," Theophilos interrupted, too exhausted for diplomacy. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind whistling through the empty apiary. Then, Nikephoros did something unexpected. He sat down on a broken hive and rubbed his eyes. "My son is in Antioch," he muttered. "The surgeons use honey to stave off gangrene. Without it..." Theophilos studied the bureaucrat's calloused hands, not a scholar's hands after all, but a soldier's. Perhaps they both serve the empire in their own ways. What happened next became legend in Constantinople's backstreets. Theophilos taught Nikephoros how to smuggle Sardinian honey past customs, wrap it in linen soaked with vinegar to mask the scent. In return, Nikephoros lost the beekeepers' tax records for 2 years. By spring, Theophilos's surviving queens bred a new strain of bees, smaller, hardier, able to withstand colder winters. He never over-harvested again. When Theophilos died decades later, his hive still hummed outside the city walls, and though no historian recorded his name, every jar of Byzantine honey carried his lesson. Even an empire is built on the patience of bees.